So I want to welcome everybody. We're going to be together for the better part of the next 2 hours. I'm going to make a presentation and take questions. I'm joined by one of our FPM faculty, Dr. Ryan Chow from New York City. He runs the Reload Center in Lower Manhattan at Union Square. He's got a team of physical therapists and a trainer with him, Hunter Krein, and together they help me carry out my mission at LA Sports and Spine, which is to give people a positive experience with movement. Most importantly, to give people tangible hope and an achievable plan. And I have a lot of bicoastal patients, and we're kind of sister sites. And I want to welcome you, Ryan, to this second webinar.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Honored that everybody's tuning in from, I'm seeing Paris, Cyprus, Venezuela, Denmark, Bolivia, among all the other people that Dr. Liebenson mentioned. So I'm happy to be here and excited to get started.
I want to introduce Aaron from Minnesota and Geronimo from Florida. Aaron, you want to tell people how they can ask questions?
Yep, so after Dr. Liebenson's presentation, we will be doing a little bit of a Q&A. So if you guys take a look at the top of your screen, you'll see the Q&A option. We will be pulling questions from there. We will not be taking questions from the chat. So anything that comes up while Dr. Liebenson is presenting, please throw it in the Q&A, not the chat. Me and Geronimo will be keeping an eye on that. And then we'll relay those questions to Dr. Liebenson once he finishes his presentation. So thanks, guys.
Fantastic. And thank you guys for participating. So we held the second webinar on Sunday, 9 a.m., which is our usual time. We bumped up our capacity from 100 to 500 and we exceeded it. So we decided to go live again. I hope second time is even better than the first. We also hope you join us. We'll be weekly. For at least the next 4 weeks, probably 6 weeks or more, as we unspool how to execute and carry out and administer self-help in a telehealth format. Ironically, I've been teaching rehab since the 1980s. Rehab is active care is self-care. Self-care works really well on telehealth. The principles that you need to understand and know for telehealth are the same as for in-person, and it works surprisingly well. Megan Marie in Boston, who's also in San Francisco most of the time, she wrote a beautiful blog for us on the FPM website. It's the #1 blog on the top of our list, all about how surprisingly and ironically, when you are at some distance, you actually can have more focus, less options, more focus, less options, more results, according to the great Pavel Tsatsouline. And it helps us focus. And my patients, I'm going to share you some of the videos. My patients have been commenting on the fact that they're working out harder with me at a distance than even in the clinic where we have more bells and whistles. So try to keep an open mind about this. There are some silver linings to all this. Sometimes when you look at things right in the strangest places, you get shown the light, as Robert Hunter, the Grateful Dead lyricist, once wrote. And that's one of the lessons, I think, of COVID-19 is there's a lot of negative, but there's also some promising things that we're getting to witness, that we're getting to observe. We're learning what's happening with our environment. Crime is down, less pollution. The canals in Venice are clearer. The air and sky over Beijing is clear. We're focusing our attention on what to do with our homeless and prisons and refugee crises. So who knows what can happen? We're all learning to reconnect with people that perhaps we've been too busy in the rat race. I have a patient who writes op-eds for the Wall Street Journal, and he's gonna write an op-ed in the coming days about how getting outside of our routine and the rat race could actually help us reflect and see things in a new light, to Robert Hunter's point. So here we are, and I want to get going on this. Let's all wash our hands, Texas style. Pretend you just cut up a bunch of jalapenos and now you're about to take your contacts out. So 2 happy birthday songs. Get between those fingers. Safety first. Everybody stay safe, but also stay strong. Here's a good example of what's required here. So we can overdo it, I guess, is the message there we're supposed to gather. But here it is in a nutshell. Dr. Carol Levitt, one of my great mentors, along with Professor Vladimir Yanda, he said it very succinctly: rehab is to show a person what they can do for themselves. And if we think about the founding father of modern medicine, Hippocrates, he said, first do no harm. And Dr. Levitt said the first treatment is to teach people to avoid what harms them. And what is it that is the biggest nocebo out there? The biggest nocebo out there is when we make people dependent on us, or when we make them feel like victims, and we don't show them that their pain is really just a byproduct of something upstream where they can actually make a difference in their life. So if somebody is made to feel that they have pathology on a scan, they have a herniated disc or a torn labrum in their hip or shoulder, torn rotator cuff, narrow spinal canal, and they're told they have wear and tear and they should learn to live with it. These ideas are negative messages. They disable people, literally disable people. We want to give people hope. We want to give them a plan. And we do that very simply by showing them that hurt doesn't necessarily equal harm, and that activity isn't dangerous. This is the reassurance and reactivation paradigm, the sine qua non for best practices or evidence-based medicine, which has been around since the 1980s and been basically ignored. Knowledge translation is notoriously poor. It takes 2 or 3 decades just to get 14% of knowledge into practice. And today, Ryan and I want to help you bridge the gap from what information is out there, what's been disseminated, but has been hard to implement. And telehealth is constraining all of this. Online coaching constrains us, but when we're forced by this constraint to guide by the side, it's unbelievable what we can do. In fact, it may even be better by having a little distance. We don't get roped into the fix-it mentality. We're forced to create an environment that constrains people in a relatable way, that challenges them at the edge of their capability. And then we're encouraged through the gamification of this to let people kind of problem solve on their own. And when we guide by the side, the magic occurs. People start to learn. And this is the difference between motor learning and motor control. I wrote a whole book, 2nd edition Rehab of the Spine, on motor control and corrective exercises. And my mea culpa for you, I got it wrong. I wrote a book called A Functional Training Handbook. And when I researched the final 2 chapters, the great coaches of the world on skill acquisition, it turns out that putting people in an environment where they figure stuff out on their own, something John Wooden knew, the great UCLA basketball coach, allows people to learn on their own. It's more of a positive experience. And people can figure stuff out. They make mistakes, but they learn from those mistakes. So Ryan, I know you love to share the Alvin Toffler futurist slide about learning. Do you want to talk about that slide just for a quick sec?
Yeah, the quote it goes something along the lines of, the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who can't read or write, but it's those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that's the quote. And I think it speaks highly of the path that we all have to take to get better outcomes and to be better clinicians and coaches, because a lot of the things that we learn, like you said, become outdated, but we don't know it yet. I'm reminded of John Ioannidis and how he wrote a paper that was the most cited paper, I think in 2017, that talks about how 80% of what's done in medical practice today is either outdated, useless, or even harmful. And to me, that's unacceptable. A lot of us, who read research and who are doing things to try to improve best practices, we have a million things stopping us, and vested interests and all these what we're used to doing and what's convenient and all these things that end up little by little deterring us from pushing the envelope. And I'm glad that we've gathered so many people who are open to change and who want to do better and who want to push the envelope. So I'm excited for everybody to see how we explore how to do this better.
Wow. So I appreciate that, Ryan. And that's the learn it all attitude. Jair Lee from Exos, the world's leading performance center. He always says what he loves about FPM, First Principles of Movement, is that we're a community of people who are integrating. We don't pick a side. We're not silo based. We're not saying our way is better than another way. We're teaching people how to avoid this dilemma of information overload in this internet social media age, and really how to find efficient solutions to distinguish the wheat from the chaff, or the signal from the noise, as Tim Ferriss refers to it. So we're in the age of self-care, shifting to e-health, concierge care, and also to online coaching. We've got a lot of tools. We know why we do what we do. So we're in the game now. And we've learned how to provide a meaningful movement experience for people, all the professionals here. There's no junior practitioners in this audience here of almost 200 people. But the big question is how to transition from what Professor McGill calls a junior practitioner to what we call the path of mastery. So how do we become masters? And it's going to be in the weeds. It's going to be by digging into the nuances. That's what distinguishes the artist. And this isn't about you learning to play jazz or somebody taking a seminar and I'm riffing on something and showing something and nobody can repeat it. That's a red herring. It's really about the basics. Less options, more focus. Less options, better results. So we're in a black swan event right now. And this was unexpected that it would happen now. We couldn't predict when it would happen. Former President Obama said it was going to happen. He told us to get prepared. He helped us get prepared. And of course, in spite of that, we weren't prepared. In essence, for issues having to do with lifespan and health span, for issues having to do with disability, and for trying to help people be better prepared for a future of athleticism, for establishing a foundation in youth athletes for the long haul, for elite athletes and weekend warriors. You got to stay in the game. You got to train for the game. And so what this all comes down to is a very, very simple system. The system is called gapping, according to Coach Carmen Bott. It's where you bridge the gap from what you have to what you need. And so what we need to know, Ryan calls it the floor. Clint Eastwood says, and I posted it today on Instagram, that a man's got to know his limitations. And what we are here to do as coaches and clinicians is to show people where they're limited, and not limited on something where you can't make an impact. In an anti-fragile model of Nissam Taleb, we know that we don't want to show people things that they can't make an intervention, can't make an impactful intervention on. We want to find where we can get the most results with the least investment. We want to have something that has minimal downside risk and has minimal cost, yet maximum yield. How we can get the mostest from the leastest, like Marty Gallagher, the great powerlifting coach, says. And so bridging the gap is that process. It's that systematic approach where we start by doing a history. And I'll spend 45 minutes. Professor McGill will spend 3 hours. I spend 45 minutes doing a deep dive on the KPIs, or key performance indicators, something I learned from Mark Verstegen, the founder of Exos. We want to know about one's training history, their injury history. I want to know about their goals. I want to know about their aspirations. I want to know about their fears and worries and concerns. I want to know what they do currently, what they've given up because of pain, how much more they want to do a certain activity. And when I've done a thorough needs analysis, now I'm ready to assess for what your limitations are, AKA what Clint Eastwood was saying in Dirty Harry. And when we assess your floor, we're looking for the low-hanging fruit, as Gray Cook calls it. You're only as strong as your weakest link. John F. Kennedy said it best, the rising tide lifts all the boats. So when we know what you have and we know what you need, then it's a simple process. And you can use all the methods and don't have to be a slave of any of them. You can use SFMA and FMS. You can follow any cookbook you want, but really it should be N equals 1. It should be person-centered. It should be athlete-centered. It should be patient-centered. Then all the methods can serve the goal. And whose goal? The client's goal, the patient's goal. They want to be able to play soccer into their 50s. They're 30. They have friends that are hurting their knees. What can they do now? Well, how do they squat? How do they change direction? How do they use the ground forces? How do they handle single leg frontal plane activities when they're fatigued? So in essence, how to bridge the gap from what people have, their floor, to what they need, the ceiling of their demands, and even for unexpected black swan type of events. So here is the picture. This is the $1 million picture. This is the code breaker. This is a picture from Jill Cook. It's used by Tim Gabat and others. We want to go from what you have to what you need. We take a history to find out what you have. And one of the reasons why my history is a little shorter than Professor McGill's, I'm going to see you again probably in a week. And even on telehealth, I can see you in a week. I may not be as expensive. I'm more affordable. Many of us, when we go back to seeing people, we may see them again in the same week even. So for me, I would say one of the things that I learned from Professor McGill was to spend more time with people. Even though I'm going to see them again, it takes a good hour for McGill to take the history, then an hour to do the assessment, and an hour to do a test of training. I don't have to do all that at once. My patients have places to go. There is a rat race out there, and I'm going to see you again. And I'm not as expensive. But that's the process. These are the building blocks. And he's laid out the architecture of the scientific framework for coaching and rehab: history, exam, training. So here's Tim Gabat's view. So it's not just where you need to go, your ceiling. It's not just where you are, the floor or your basement, but it's also how much time you have. If you're going to do a 10K in 6 weeks and you just started a spike tendinopathy in your calf or in your knee, well, I need to know that we have 6 weeks, because I may need to have to regress you, do some recovery work on the fly, see if there's any foundational glitches in your armamentarium, shore those things up, and do it in less time than I expected. So I love Tim Gabat's view here because it also brings in the timing. So some of the biggest questions that were triggered from the first webinar: how do I onboard people? How do I effectively catalyze this behavior change? And these are from Alex Tsang from Hong Kong. He was with us on Sunday. I don't know that he's with us today. For some individuals, I already have a hard time to convince them of active care. How do I motivate them to move beyond the Batman role of a fix-it approach where I just take care of things? How do I balance active and passive care? And where do I draw the line, and for which patients? So Alex has joined me in China. He's joined me in Prague. He's been at both the first and second webinars. And these are essential questions. The first one, how do I effectively catalyze behavior change? We're learning. I think telehealth is helping us, because in telehealth, the fix-it approach is off the table. It is easier to catalyze behavior change with respect to the SNAPs, the smoking, nutrition, alcohol, physical activity, stress, sleep, and social participation, lifestyle determinants of non-communicable diseases and musculoskeletal disability. Then when we have people in front of us, when they have us in front of us, they want us to put on our Batman cape. They want us to fix them. Come on, doc, can't you just adjust me? I know it'll feel better. But obviously it's easier when we're guiding by the side. So this is a great opportunity for us to get to all those people who expect passive care. Right now, there is an environmental constraint, a social constraint through no coercion of us saying, no, I'm not going to adjust you today. I'm not going to massage you. I'm not going to stretch you. Just by bad luck of this COVID-19 virus. So in the end, how do we balance this? Well, the balance should be more to active than passive. The balance should be active first, so that people attribute to self-care. Otherwise, we promote dependency. And where do we draw the line? It's different for each person. I would say if you're Kawhi Leonard, I'm giving you a lot of passive care. because you've earned recovery, as David Joyce, the great coach from Sydney, says. You earn it by all the load that you put your body through. But for most people, we have to violate their expectation that they're fragile and that they need passive care. That's a nocebo. We're micromanaging and medicalizing normal human experiences of stiffness and aches and pains and tightness. When they say, oh, my QL is tight, can't we stretch it? Those people in my office, and I'm going to show you one of them today, those people in the office, they coerce us. We have no choice but to satisfy their wish for, can't you just put your elbow in my QL? But guiding by the side through telehealth, that's not even on the table. So we're able to draw the line in a way that is more productive, more impactful, more upstream of getting to the source of the source for them. I want to ask Ryan to talk on this too, because it's such an essential question, and he's the king of getting buy-in. He gets buy-in from billionaires, and when you can get buy-in from billionaires, you can get buy-in from anybody. Rhino, why don't you riff on this?
I think the key to what you said was spending the 45 minutes to an hour to get to know the person in front of you, because in that time, not only are you making people feel like they're being heard, but you get hints as to why things didn't work out through the passive approaches, why they haven't made progress, why what might actually be the biggest drivers of these things, because it can be so many different things. So when you spend the time to hear somebody, you listen to them, you start to hear hints about miseducations, things that they've been told that aren't necessarily accurate, or nocebos that have got them feeling dejected and feel like there's no hope. And then when you start to see the picture of what are all the drivers of the behavior that isn't allowing someone to overcome these things, is sometimes it's not, they don't have the requisite knowledge. Sometimes they don't think certain things are actually helpful, or sometimes they think the structural pathology is so insurmountable that there's only a structural solution. So once you gather all this information, you start to create an experience that educates them, but also I think it's so helpful to give them a movement experience, an activity experience that's positive, like you say, but it also changes their mind that maybe if I had a torn meniscus and I was doing squats before and my knee hurt, but then we did a bunch of glute work, we did a little calf work, we got some obliques active, and you did the same squat 5 minutes later, I didn't sew up your meniscus. Well, why does it feel better now? So you create an experience that violates the story, that changes the story that they've been told. And a lot of people already have a hunch about this, because that's why they're there to see you. But sometimes intellectually someone will understand what a study says, but if you don't have a feeling and experience that matches it, it's hard to believe, even if you want to. So I think that's the key, is to really get an understanding of where that person is. And that goes back to the slide you talked about, gapping. It's, if you really understand where the person is, you know where to start. And if you have an understanding of where their endpoint is, then you can start to create a roadmap there. But too many times, I think we get caught up trying to stuff people into these neat little boxes that they just don't exist. The COVID has shown us that this is about complex systems. We can't predict everything, because there's so many difficult complexities and mixtures of different factors that we can't account for. You can't, it's too reductionist to say that, oh, if this then that. It's just not reality. So I think utilizing the needs analysis and the gap analysis is the key to getting buy-in. There's no one solution. It's just getting good at getting to know your people.
That's awesome, Ryan. I see Mark Templeton's rejoining us from South Africa. Welcome. Michael Burke from Pacific Northwest. We got people from Venezuela. Audrey is here from Paris. Lampros from Cyprus. Manuel from Venezuela. Buenos dias. So people on Facebook, if you want to ask questions later, you can go to our First Principles of Movement Facebook page. You can ask questions there. Or Aaron or Geronimo will post on Facebook what the link is to join the Zoom midstream. And you can post some questions here, which Aaron and Geronimo are going to be sifting through. Some of the questions we'll get to, some will be baked in to webinar number 3. Every Sunday, 9 a.m., we'll be running this webinar for probably the next 4, 5, 6, maybe even up to 7 or 8 weeks. It's my great honor to be joined today by my panelist, Ryan Chow, teaches for me. I think you're starting to hear in his voice the very practical expression of the modern hybrid approach, where clinicians and coaches are working together side by side, and we're all working on the lifestyle determinants of health span, of healthy longevity, that are upstream of the source of musculoskeletal disability. Dr. Levitt said, "He who treats the site of symptoms is lost." We want to get to the source. Our method should serve the goals. Dr. Levitt said, your method should serve the goals. Don't be a slave of methods. And I would say, whose goals? As Dan John, the great coach, says, the goal is the goal. It's the patient's goal. What is your goal? We spend 45 minutes on our needs analysis to get to not just their goals, but their fears, their worries, their concerns, their activity history, their training history, what they used to do, what they currently do, their volume, their expectations, what they think is wrong. Their intuition is so important from us. As Galileo said, we can learn something even from the most ignorant person. We should be humble and listen empathetically. Sadly, the history is a lost art. We go right to the FMS. We go right to so-called special tests in orthopedics. And we skip the history. Doctors don't even see patients. Doctors have a nurse practitioner see the person. No history. They won't even see you without a scan, yet scans are unreliable. 50% false positive rate with most scans. So we can do a much better job. We want to listen. We don't want to interrupt. Studies show that most doctors interrupt every 7-10 seconds. I just want to sit back, practice motivational interviewing, listen. When it's time to say something, I'm going to try to restate what the person said to seek verification in their mind that they were heard, that validation, that I got it right. And then I want to reflect in an unhurried environment. This is all part of motivational interviewing. This is how you build up a therapeutic alliance. I want to reflect and then talk about some ideas, get their feedback. And before we begin the exam, I want to say, is there anything else? Are you sure? And I'll do that again after the exam, after we train some things and come up with a self-care proposal. I want to say, is there anything else? Are you sure? And I want to make sure they know that just because we're propping the window open doesn't mean that it's going to lead to immediate results. Things can go up and down. Things can be topsy-turvy. We're going to be scientists. What we propose as self-care is just a hypothesis. It's not a recipe. It's not a protocol. In the end, it's going to be plan B, C, D, G. That's what being a scientist is. Later, I'm going to show a video from one of our great physicists about how science is the Alvin Toffler approach. It's learning and unlearning. It's learning what we got wrong. As Ioannidis was quoted by Ryan as saying, most of the stuff we got wrong. So we want to keep an open mind, as Dr. Levitt said, for new ideas that sometimes show what we thought or believed before was wrong. We work at the level of acceptable uncertainty. And so my mission at LA Sports and Spine is to give people a positive experience with movement. We do that by creating an environment in which every person feels valued, inspired, and challenged. Beginning from their first visit, they should leave with renewed energy, tangible hope, and an achievable plan of action. So surgery is on the table for pain patients, but of course it's a last result. We want to start simple. And I think the elephant in the room was best described by the great Lorimer Moseley, the great pain scientist, the PT who was frustrated because he wasn't finding a correlation between damage and pain, between injury and pain. He wasn't finding a correlation between symptoms and degeneration. And he said that we need to look elsewhere. And so he became a neuroscientist. He went to Oxford and traveled all the way from Australia to become this great pain scientist. And in criticism of the great Lancet expose about the modern best practices for musculoskeletal pain, in particular back pain, he said what they missed is while they recommended education and exercise as the only high value options, just as 30 years ago, 35 years ago, evidence-based practice said reassurance and reactivation, Lorimer said the assumption is that education is simple. And yet changing behavior, the elephant in the room is that changing behavior is not simple. Back pain is not simple. Knee pain is not simple. There are many forces at play that propagate the widespread mismanagement that Ryan was quoting John Ioannidis about. The massive, massive elephant in the room that entire professions appear to depend on the problem remaining unsolved will be hard to tackle. In the meantime, the glaringly obvious cornerstone of best practice care that somehow keeps flying under the radar is that something as simple or deceptively simple as education is rarely appreciated for all of the complexity. And I think that the value of this telehealth experiment for all of us, of it being thrust on us and us being forced into it, is we're being forced to do a better job of education, of how not to be a doctor, how to use telehealth to make sense of conditions. This is from JP Canario and Peter O'Sullivan from Australia. Their clinic, they've gone online for the first time. And on telehealth, we can make sense of a condition. We can use lifestyle strategies to teach people how to self-manage. And we can coach skills by the side to help people gain an internal locus of control. So at the end of the day, we want to use game theory. We want to find behavioral nudges that make it easier for people, more enjoyable. We want to gamify. It's fun to have fun, but you got to know how, like Dr. Seuss said. We want to address misconceptions such as stinking thinking, where people think that every hurt equals harm or that activity is harmful. I mean, heck, they've been told they have wear and tear. They've been told it's degenerative, and they're 50 and they have to learn to live with it, and they should stop doing things that are painful. Well, what happens? You decondition. When you decondition, you atrophy. When you atrophy, now your muscles aren't there to help you with your degenerative joints. If you have arthritides from being on this planet for a long time, like you develop wrinkles, well, they don't have to be symptomatic. But sure as anything, if you've gotten deconditioned, they're going to be symptomatic. So it's a self-fulfilling thing. And Ryan sent me something yesterday. I don't know if you briefly want to mention it, but with COVID-19, we're not going to be part of this on the front end, but there's a lot of deconditioning. The people that are survivors, the people that have been put on respirators when they survive, those that do survive, they're deconditioned. You want to mention this stunning revelation and the need that's going to arise?
Yeah, so I have a bunch of friends who are hospital workers inside of ICUs. And there's also a study by the CDC who they released recently, as well as data from Italy about who's been most affected and who the virus is most dangerous to, and most at risk. And it's related to chronic disease. The people with the most comorbidities that are specifically chronic disease, like CVD, hypertension, and diabetes, are people who are the most risk. So these are people who tend to be deconditioned. And what ends up happening is, because of the strict, because of how many people they're expecting to let into the hospitals, only people who've been sick for a week or two are admitted, so they know it's serious. And then these people are usually mostly bedridden for a week or two. And then when they get to the hospitals, they're almost bedridden for a week or two before they get out. So study on geriatrics show that when someone is bound to a bed, they lose about 1% of their muscle per day. So people are coming out with up to 40-50% of sarcopenia, muscle atrophy. And these, it's no one's focused on what happens once you get discharged, but there's going to be so many people who are going to be in a bad place, and there's no resource for this. There's no, hi Harley. There's not a secondary place that people are sending them. Doctors are saying, you're okay now, go home and rest. Nobody's saying, hey, seek out your, a local professional who's trained to recondition you. Maybe it's a physiotherapist, maybe it's a trainer, maybe it's I don't know. There's no place for everyone to go as a central resource. So that's something I want to work on, so that people have some basic objectives to shoot for, some basic information, some basic understanding of how that affects their other organ systems when you don't move your musculoskeletal system. And it's going to be something that I think us, all the people in this webinar can really make a great impact, because there's not enough attention there, and there's a easy way we can help by being ready for them.
Well, that's inspiring, and it should inspire us to do things post-COVID that can reduce the fall risk. I see Tim Latham has joined us, and Matteo from the Middle East is here. Welcome, you guys. Thanks for joining us. So, you know, fall risk has gone up 400% since 2000. We need to teach people the value of strengthening. We need to teach people to address sarcopenia. We'll do a deep dive next webinar, webinar 3, this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the why, what, and how of bridging the gap and guiding by the side and taking on the Alfred role instead of always having to be Batman, and how to focus on motor learning and dynamic systems theory and constraints-based things as opposed to corrective exercises and things of that ilk. Probably webinar number 4 we'll delve into sarcopenia and atrophy and deconditioning. And each webinar will have its own special emphasis as we deal with the issues of mastery and the nuances. Here was a great question from Mark, who's with us again. So many are freaking out in South Africa that they can't adjust or touch their patients. I absolutely resonate with everything you've said. Deep down, I've always believed it. I think we as chiros still push the maintenance stance too much. And when things change, we freak out as we feel we've lost that identity. There's so much more in telehealth as a way of making that reach so much further and better. Thanks for an amazing webinar, superbly thoughtful. Thank you, Dr. Mark Templeton in South Africa. Thank you. You know, I was just this morning with a group from the Royal College of Chiropractors in England. A lot of friends such as Neil Osborne from Anglo-European Chiropractic College in Bournemouth and all over England. And we were talking a lot about this, these expectations. So the worst enemy of the clinical encounter for the patient is when they're expecting the doctor to give them a steroid shot, or the chiropractor to give them an adjustment, or the massage therapist to give them a massage, or the trainer to do corrective exercise, or the physical therapist to peel them back to band exercises and floor exercises or clamshells, for goodness sake. Oh my gosh, don't get me started. But you know, we manage people away from load. And there was an article today, my brother-in-law, Tom Duraldi in Manhattan Beach, he's retired, amazing family practitioner. He sent me from the New England Journal of Medicine, hot off the press, osteoarthritis of the knee and corticosteroid injections versus rehab exercise. Lo and behold, how many doctors see somebody with painful osteoarthritis of the knee and suggest, well, you know, we can fix this for you. It's too painful, we'll give you a shot. Yet not telling them, to John Ioannidis's point, that actually the exercises are not only equal, but are superior. It reminds me of surgery for rotator cuff tear. People think if they have shoulder pain and they get a scan and they have a rotator cuff tear, that the tear is the cause of their pain. Yet they're not told. So then they're thinking they're feeling vulnerable, they're feeling fragile, and they have no choice but to resort to surgery. They're not told that the false positive rate is 50% in asymptomatics their age. They're not told that those that get conservative care have just as much likelihood as getting better as those that have surgery, nor are they told that if they have surgery, even if they have a positive outcome, there's a 30% chance of a re-tear without it becoming symptomatic. So is the tear the cause of the pain? Unlikely. So we want to move away from the Batman role. We want to guide by the side and give people the tools. We want to spend more time being Alfred and less time trying to fix things. So here's one from Ash Mokhtar. And I think he posted this on our Facebook page after webinar 1. I meant to ask this question in today's webinar. I did a 10-week rotation in Virginia. I've seen a lot of patients with psychological components to their pain presentation. And I wanted to ask, with people with functional limitations due to previous injuries, how do you overcome the fear avoidance associated with their dysfunction when trying to incorporate active care? So this is a great question. Like the one about the ratio of active and passive and how to motivate people. It gets to the root of people's feeling that they're fragile. We want to reassure and reactivate. We want to violate their expectations that hurt equals harm. We might use the traffic light and say, listen, if it's red, don't do it. If it's yellow, if every time you hit an intersection in your car and it's yellow, you slam on the brakes, you're going to get rear-ended half the time. So yellow doesn't necessarily mean stop. And if it's green, we don't even have to pay it any heed at all. If pain is 0, 1, or 2, and your patient is one of these patients where they're like, I want to make sure you know, doc, that hurts a little bit. Well, that's fear avoidance beliefs. And fear avoidance beliefs lead to fear avoidance behavior. leads to pain hypervigilance and catastrophizing. We want to focus on positive behaviors. We don't want to just always manage away reactively from pain. We want to support positive behaviors. And I do that in my office by tearing down walls in the clinic. I get rid of treatment tables. I open up more floor space for strength training. I do that by showing people that the World Health Organization not only recommends 30 minutes a day of physical activity of moderate intensity for all people, and twice a week of strength training for all people to prevent fall risk, to prevent non-communicable diseases, to prevent disabling musculoskeletal pain. But tragically, 90% of people over the age of 70 don't meet those guidelines. Tragically, just horrifically, 50% of children the age of 5 don't meet those guidelines. And perhaps most damaging of all, the majority of physical therapists and probably the majority of chiropractors don't even know those guidelines. 30 minutes a day of activity, of moderate intensity, twice a week of strength training. So what can we do? Well, we can just share with an infographic from the World Health Organization or CDC or the American College of Sports Medicine. We can share the infographic that this is what's recommended for 70-year-olds. Now you got a 40-year-old who's got a knee problem. Well, if a 70-year-old can do it, why can't I? And when you explain to the 70-year-olds that if you're inactive, you're atrophying, like Ryan said, 8% per decade. You have more than an 8% per decade loss of strength. This adds up. And yet, if you're 70, 2 or 3 months of twice a week resistance training make that sarcopenia and atrophy reversible. So that's exciting. We want to share this news with people, Ash, and I think that can help onboard them. We want to violate their expectations, as Ben Smith and Chris Littlewood say, that not every hurt equals harm. This is all part of stinking thinking. People think hurt equals harm because we've made them fragile. We've managed them away from load by the way we treat people with passive care. So by using active care, you give people a positive experience with movement, and they walk away feeling empowered. They attribute to themselves rather than attributing to you. So Kimberly said, thank you for hosting the webinar today. It was very informative and inspiring. I know we ran out of time, but I was just wondering if you could answer this one question someone else posted. He asked, with people with functional limitations due to previous injuries, how do you overcome the fear avoidance with their dysfunction? Again, thank you for dedicating a part of your day to educating and chatting with us. So it's really Ash's question. And you can see how pertinent this is. We're going to go into this in every detail over the next 5 or 6 weeks. And we know from the literature that pain education before an activity, Ash, can help reduce people's pain expectations, fear avoidance, can lower their cortisol, can make it so their pain threshold rises. We know that the hurt you feel becomes the feeling you hurt. And similarly, we know that if you want your body to feel better, you should feel your body move better. If you want your body to feel better, you should feel your body move better. Kieran O'Sullivan said, and I put this on the Facebook page in response to Ash's question after the first webinar, if a person believes their back is vulnerable and could easily be injured, they're more likely to avoid usual activities or to move too carefully, which limits the potential for recovery. So if they feel vulnerable, we don't want to make them feel more vulnerable. We don't want to use terms like you're out of alignment, you have a sacral torsion, your back is unstable. We want to avoid the language of nocebos. Peter O'Sullivan and others, shoulder specialists like Lewis, they talk about how our words are very powerful. I'm unstable, I'm weak, I'm deconditioned. More pain equals more damage. My spine is fragile, it's deteriorating, it's degenerative, I'm out of alignment, I'll never be able to bend again. You know, I can't tell you how many patients I've seen recently where they're finding that bending is tolerated. I used to think bending was forbidden, that if you have acute low back pain and flexion sensitivity, you should avoid flexion. I taught people how to spare their spine, yet I'm learning more and more that sometimes that itself is a nocebo, and some people, if you tell them it's safe to bend, they actually feel better. I'm not sure I can predict who's who, but I know I'm seeing this more and more, and I want to thank Peter O'Sullivan for teaching me this. So Dr. Levitt said, as far as technique and skill is important, but maybe it doesn't have to be perfect. Don't try to teach perfect patterns, rather correct the key fault that's causing the trouble. And when we were at Stanford, when I hosted Professor McGill and Gray Cook there, we learned that scoring system of the FMS was being called into question by none other than Gray Cook himself. We learned that he said that the score 2, which was a decompensated pattern, a dysfunctional pattern, was to be distinguished from the score of a 1, which is unacceptable dysfunction. So 0 is pain, and 1 is unacceptable dysfunction, and 2 is dysfunction, but it's not unacceptable dysfunction. And number 3 is pristine. And he said, you know, if I had to do it over with, I'd simplify it, I'd get rid of the 2s. And the question I have for all of you is, where would he put the 2s? Would he move the 2s with the 1s, since the 1s are also dysfunctional? Or would he move the 2s with 3s, even though they're not pristine? The surprise was, maybe some of you get this, maybe most of you get it. He said, move the 2s with the 3s, because it's more actionable. And I think what we did with corrective exercise, what I'm guilty of is promoting a cottage industry of corrective exercise specialists who are doing something Pavel Tsatsouline has warned us against. Pavel said, leave your corrective exercises outside of my gym. We're micromanaging every little asymmetry until we have no will left to be strong. It's not the load that breaks us down, it's the load we're not prepared for. And we're managing people away from load, as the great Tim Kabat, the great sports scientist, says. So my mea culpa for you all is use Rehab of the Spine 2nd edition as kindling. Use it to start a fire, to keep yourselves warm. It's too much on motor control, too much on corrective exercise, not enough on motor learning. That's what I learned in researching the functional training handbook, was that skill acquisition depends on motor learning, which depends on problem solving. As Chris Miller, a great sprint coach at Altus, the world's leading sprint and throw center in the world in Arizona, said, I take my athletes and I immerse them in the basic training elements of squat, lunge, hinge, push, pull, carry, and I let them figure it out. I create the constraints, the environment. So my bias has always been that motor control was the key to rehab. It turns out the weight of evidence has been wrong. And Ryan, you're this savant for this, guiding by the side, getting people into a gym environment at Performix House in Union Square, where you've got all these fit people. Share with people how you unspool this idea, not just of active care over passive care, but also of the role of strength and the safety value of resistance training.
I think when you're the way you just described corrective exercise being a dead end, it really struck a chord with me, because I was doing the same thing. I was trying to get people to get like 1 extra degree of movement, 2 extra degrees of movement, instead of, I missed the big picture, is that if people are focused on motor control and doing everything perfectly, they never get to build enough resilience. You made a really good point about that, but that also goes along with what you're talking about with the pain is if we stop at every 0, 1, and 2, every 1, 2, and 3 on the pain scale, we never actually get to do anything hard enough that develops the person. So being in a gym, having a hunter who's a strength and conditioning coach changes expectations, and people, they put their fears and they put their expectations to a higher level, because they know it's time to work, and it's a gym. They know it's a strength and conditioning coach, not a PT. So it really helps. And that's the same thing we're seeing with social distancing, is that when you have no choice but to do exercise and to learn how to do the exercise and learn the reps and sets and learn how to set it up, because your trainer's not there, your PT's not there to do it for you, you start to really develop and have a focus on the things that are going to get upstream and help you learn and understand what to do for yourself in the long term. So I think that's the strengthening and the it gets upstream of everything, and the learning gets upstream of everything. So I think that's the main thing. Oh, we have dropped. Hold on, let's try to get Dr. Liebenson in here. Okay, so the real benefit to, I think, getting upstream is that we all get caught up with the small things that we learn in school about, like getting full hip extension or making sure everything is perfect in terms of movement, or that that we have to be perfectly pain-free with everything we do in order to make progress. And I think we get lost trying to chase these um, surrogate measures instead of reaching the actual goal. And I think too many of us have lost. We don't have enough of the background, or the coaching background, or the strength background, to really understand how to push people outside their comfort zones. And that's something that myself and my team of physical therapists are pursuing really. They're pursuing greatly, because we understand that that's the next frontier. Guys, give me 1 second. Let me see what's going on with Dr. Liebenson.
Hey, Ryan, we could ask you some questions here.
Yep.
While he comes back. So we have a question from Daniel Brown. For students, if you don't have a background in movement sciences, how do they start pursuing this idea of moving well? What is good movement and what is bad movement?
So what's good and what's bad is relative to the person's goal. This is one of the hardest things, because we teach that you have to attack the lowest hanging fruit. And sometimes, that's noticing that someone's foot is wobbly, or someone's hip hinge is a little more back dominant or knee dominant than we want. But, we learn those things in school a little bit, but we sometimes we forget the context. Sometimes things are not important in certain people's stories, and sometimes it's super important to give them positive experience. So I think good and bad movement is the wrong way to look at it. Every exercise is a test, as Professor Yanda taught Dr. Liebenson, and Dr. Liebenson taught me. So you want to have context for what's good enough movement for a person. Is it trainable? Can your body adapt to the stress in that type of movement quality? Does it get better over time, or does it not move the needle on the movement quality or the resilience that they have? And so good or bad, I don't think is a little too binary for me. There's a lot of gray area in this. In order to start chipping away at this, I think what people have to do is they need to study from coaches, from trainers. They are our teachers now. I think probably 10 out of the last 14 continuing education courses I've taken in the last year are all from strength and conditioning coaches, not from physical therapists, not from chiropractors, not from clinicians, because they have experience, they have skin in the game. Their athletes either get stronger, stay resilient, and win, or they, put together a program that doesn't respect physiology, exercise science, or their athletes' specific desires, wants, needs, and personal lives, and then they don't get the results. So they've stress tested their methods. So I think studying from strength and conditioning coaches is the next frontier, and I've invested a lot of time and effort there, and it's paid off very well for us. I know. Welcome back, Dr. Liebenson. Can you hear us?
I'm listening, baby. Take one more question.
How do you transition both in practice and convincing patients to go from a mindset of reliance on you to a predominantly self-care?
Doc, are you taking that, or am I taking that?
No, you got it.
Okay. So reliance on self-care, I think, is about empowerment and a positive experience. It starts with getting people to understand that what they can do for themselves is better than what any doctor can do for them, because we know that all the things that improve musculoskeletal health and health today have to do with lifestyle factors and behavior and social determinants of health, instead of what can the doctor treat you with, what kind of treatment can you get, what kind of shot, surgery. Those things have their place, and they can help in very specific situations. But we know that 70% of disease today is chronic, and we know that 7 out of the top 10 reasons people are dying in the world today is from chronic disease. So those things don't develop over time and then get fixed with a magic pill. The solution to something that develops over time is change in behavior. So I think getting people to not just behavior, but getting changes that take time to set in. So I think educating people on that is the key. Is it starts with us arming ourselves with the information, and then us learning about our clients, being great listeners, and then delivering the information that they will understand and believe. I know everybody is right now in the world, all their clients expect adjustments, shots, surgeries, something to fix them. But if we start providing the education that shows us that reassurance is more important than a treatment, and reactivation is the safe starting point to start back your life, then we've gotten the ball rolling in the right direction.
All right, folks, everybody stand up, raise your arms up, stretch it out. We're at halftime here, and I want to read another question we got from webinar 1 from Brett Poneros. Something that's incredibly important, but I've noticed takes a great deal of practice, is picking exercises that challenge the person and make them work, but are safe and don't perpetuate the negative pain cycle or negative thoughts. An exercise that is too easy makes people feel like they didn't accomplish anything. An exercise too difficult discourages people and may contribute to the feedback loop. Use their movement and life goals and match exercises that are both challenging and attainable. So it's kind of a comment more than a question. I think you've answered it, Brett. You know, the flow state is defined by saying it's not too easy and not too hard. We need a certain amount of novelty to prevent boredom. We definitely don't want things too easy. Too easy, there's no adaptation. It's all above, down, inside out, as the chiropractors say. It's all about cortical plasticity, and there's no neural change. There's no cortical plasticity if there's no challenge. There has to be stress. So our job, our expertise, if you're not a junior practitioner, if you're on the way to mastery, is in your ability to do harder things like Ryan was talking about, like the whole experience of the Reload Center at Performix House. This hybrid practitioner model that Ryan personifies, they're not doing corrective exercises. They're not doing manual therapy very often. They're using load. We're not managing people away from load. We're giving people a positive experience with movement. And the best way to give people a positive experience with movement is when you find, and it's the signature for our FPM lab immersion experiences, when you find the hardest thing that people do well. So yes, first move well, then move often. You need proficiency, but it doesn't have to be perfect. We just want to make sure that we're focused on the floor. So yes, a man has to know his limitations. Clint Eastwood. The rising tide lifts all the boats. We're lifting the floor. We want to find out what's in the gutter, and then we're going to build that up. I'm going to show you a case on Sunday. Blow your mind. A fit person, a strong person who started to wonder, you know, I'm a lot better. I still got pain. But how is it that getting stronger is going to give me gains? And that's what people want. They want gains, right? But his goal is not to get stronger. His goal is to feel more resilient when he surfs and swims and runs and doesn't get woken up at night so much by pain. Those are his goals. How, if he's already strong, is that a useful target to keep shooting for? Well, you know, you'll see on Sunday. I'm going to just leave this as a tease, but you'll see how we unspooled that and what we found and how it really was a dirty, hairy moment about a man's got to know his limitations. So it shouldn't be too hard, shouldn't be too easy. We got to find that sweet spot. That's where we come in. I want to share this audio from Mark Cargala. It's from Missing Variable podcast, all about finding what's relevant for people. I know Tim Latham is with us, our faculty member. From Boston. Tim and Laura teach in FPM, and we talk a lot about what our goal is, what our mission is at FPM, and it's really to help people achieve success and resilience and a sustainable relationship with what they deem are valued life activities to them. That's why we don't follow cookie cutters. That's why we're not a prisoner of protocols, because what's missing in all of the assessment screens, and I know Jair Lee is here from Exos. I love you, Jair. Mwah. Jair knows it's about effort. It's about getting people doing things that are hard. If you do things that are hard and you succeed, then that builds your robustness, that raises your floor, and it helps you achieve your goals. And it's a moving target. And there's no screen that gives us that. There's no functional screen. The most important thing is relatedness, which Nicole Rodriguez and Brett Bartholomew are masters of when they talk about communication. We need to know what your goals are. And that's different for every person. We need to know what we're shooting at. Then we find out whether you have what you need. And so finding out for each person what their valued life activities are, that's the key. And nobody talks about this better than Mark. So I want you to give a listen.
Problems going forward, you feel like you're losing, control things. Let's get back together. Let's get you back on the road. But you take that more coaching, more supportive cast type role versus the hero fixer role. And I think you got one. I think it's a great patient care model. You got people that are, look at you as like their movement coach, their musculoskeletal health coach, who can keep them in life and keep them, in the valued activities that are meaningful to them. Some of the traditional models are great business models because, you can get people coming in for cracks and whacks and sticks and needles and all these things and love it and want to come back for it for the rest of their lives. And maybe that, and I don't think any of those things can't be involved as long as it's, again, what's the priority? The priority should be off the plinth in life, doing valued activities, not how well you can change their symptoms with whatever your intervention of choice is. Because I think the research tells us it is not unique to many interventions to make pain change in the short term. I just think we need, but you take that more coaching, more supportive cast type role versus the hero fixer role. And I think you got one. I think it's a great patient care model. You got people that are, look at you as like their movement coach, their musculoskeletal health coach, who can keep them in life and keep them, in the valued activities that are meaningful to them. Some of the traditional models are great business models because, you can get people coming in for cracks and whacks and sticks and needles and all these things and love it and want to come back for it for the rest of their lives. And maybe that, and I don't think any of those things can't be involved as long as it's, again, what's the priority? The priority should be off the plinth in life, doing valued activities, not how well you can change their symptoms with whatever your intervention of choice is. Because I think the research tells us it is not unique to many interventions to make pain change in the short term. I just think the problems going forward, you feel like.
All right, so there you have it. Let's take another question, you guys.
All right, we got, here's one. When you talk about load, you said it's not the load itself, but it is the load we are not prepared for. In younger athletes with too much load in a short period, do you feel the same applies?
Rhino, you got this?
Yeah, I think it's that statement taken out of context implies that there could be too much load, there could be too little load. So I think for young athletes or young developing people, there can be a propensity to maybe have too much stress on the kid if they dive too deep into one sport and they specialize in it too much. That's been shown to be detrimental on their health but also their psychology and ability to stay locked into a game. But on the flip side, we have information from research studies that show that children are they're not meeting physical activity guidelines. So it can go either way. I think you have to assess each person on their own. I think children have different social settings, different expectations. So you need to monitor all the things that are influencing the amount of activity they're getting. But I wouldn't put children in either bucket of moving too much or moving too little. I think it's personalized.
Let's grab another question. These questions are awesome. Rhino, you're on fire.
So next question here from Andre. Often strength is seen as being synonymous with function. In what situations would strength be a proponent of function versus strength being a driver to be able to achieve quote unquote proper function?
I'm not sure I understand what the question is.
Let's go. We'll come back on another question in a minute. So here's the trap, okay? Things are overcomplicated and underdosed. So that's what we're moving away from is underdosed, managing people away from load. That's what it means. It's underdosed, overcomplicated, too much motor control, too much corrections, policing perfection. Dr. Levitt said, don't try to teach perfect patterns, correct the key fault that's causing the trouble. Just let that sink in. Too much corrective exercise, too much motor control, not enough guiding by the side like Alfred, and creating an environment where people get to learn on their own. If they learn on their own, it sticks. You get residual transfer. If you tell them what to do, it's fool's gold because they do it right, but that's not real coaching. Carmen Bott says, that the key is giving feedback. It's creating an environment that gives feedback. So I'll do a plank with a yoga block on the back. It's truth serum. Then I'm guiding by the side, and it's gamified. And then they figure out how not to have their back be like a canoe and rolling around without good anti-rotation control, whether it's in a beast crawl or a plank to push up or a high plank torsion buttress. When that yoga block falls off, they get the feedback right away. So we coach with feedback. We create an environment. Dynamic systems theory is about the individual. It's about the drill we choose, and it's about the environment. You can bake in these auto-regulation drills so we can guide by the side. People have more fun. They challenge themselves. The other stuff is often even nocebo. So Giovanni, he talked about this Alfred role, and this was after the first webinar. I've attended this morning's webinar. I have a couple questions. I'm a huge advocate of exercise and self-management. Exercise can sometimes be painful for people. However, while for the active person, they appreciate that this is normal, some delayed onset muscle soreness, sedentary people are often, they catastrophize it. They think that they're spiking their pain. Oh, it's getting worse. It's getting sensitized. We empower them, but at the same time, what are they going to do at home when they're guiding, when they don't have us for support and reassurance? And they start to get insecure about it. Can we, when we explain that hurt doesn't equal harm, how can we keep those people motivated? Giovanni really, he squared that one up, Aaron. He didn't foul that off. So we all have that question, and that's a challenge. And I think that, again, none of you are junior practitioners. So for the junior practitioner, that's a problem. And to onboard yourself, I would say learn the systems, learn the FMS 1-2 punch. But as you learn the principles, first principles of movement, as you learn not to be a slave of methods, you discover that our first principle is reassurance, our second is reactivation, our third is resilience, and our fourth is optionality. And so we want to teach these people, hey, number one, you always have options. You can do something else. Number two, if I'm dealing with shin splints, I'm telling the person, shin splints, any pain I want you to avoid. But if they've got tendinopathy of the knee or the calf or back pain, hurt doesn't necessarily equal harm. I'm going to try to reassure them, and I'm going to encourage them to debrief with me in between sessions, because I know they need more support, and we can do that with virtual health. We can do that with a text. We can do it with an email. At the end of the day, as Nick Winkelman said, judge your success not by what the person you're working with does with you, but what their subsequent sessions are without you. Can't say it any cleaner than that. It turns out that people who feel like they're a broken machine, they have broken parts, deteriorating, worn out parts. These people are more vulnerable, number one. And number two, where do they learn it? They learn it from us. We don't follow a biopsychosocial model. PTs and DCs still follow a biomedical model. E.L. Lederman did a great thing on the myth of stability. It was a beautiful thing that I didn't understand at the time, and now I'm starting to appreciate it. So here's the scale, the pain scale. It's different for like a shin splint, a bone pain. I'm shifting this thing over. If you've got a young person with patellofemoral pain, I'm shifting this thing over. I'm going to say, 4 is unacceptable for a youth with knee pain. We have studies on this now. If you have shin splint, 4 is a red to me. But, basically the idea is teach people the traffic light and that not every hurt equals harm. And so here you see what we're talking about with the triangle here, the pyramid. We've got the environment, which is more important than we ever realized, the task, which we choose, and then the person. And the person is the one who's going to have to do the problem solving and cope with whatever environment we set up. Now, when you think about tasks, let's say it's squat. There's a lot of different things we can do with the environment. In the first 10 minutes of Enter the Kettlebell, Pavel Satsalin's first video, he has somebody doing not even a squat. He has them doing a snatch, an overhead snatch. And he says, the tendency is to cast it. And that can cause shoulder issues down the road. So what he suggests is I want you to get up against a wall, and the wall shall be your coach. When the wall is there, it makes you keep the arm in and bring the hand in the glove and keep the arm inside your sweater as you raise it up. And then you're forced to use your hips to generate the power, and you're forced to hinge. You're forced to drive your hips away from the wall. So you're hip dominant, not knee dominant, which is one of the questions that somebody emailed me before this webinar. And so we're literally guiding by the side, creating auto-regulation as a result of how we set up the drill and how we use our environment. So here's Coach Bott's line. I'm big on giving feedback. I'm just not so big on giving cues. And I want to give you examples. Here I am in China. I don't speak Mandarin. They don't speak English. I ask people to get in a push-up position. What do we see? We see a head forward posture. I don't give any advice. I don't do any deep neck flexor training. I don't do any suboccipital soft tissue or stretching. I don't give any cues. Tuck your chin, doing a negative Z-axis translation. I simply show my iPhone to the person, and they go, whew, I can do that. Another person went into this position. Nice lower cross syndrome, open scissor, sway back, hyperlordosis. I show him the picture. He immediately pushes away from the ground using his scapular muscles. So it's not about our words. What a coach knows, this is from Lee Taft, a great sprint coach. What a coach knows and what an athlete knows about movement are two different things. It sounds obvious, but we tend to tell people too much. We tell them more than they know. It pushes them into being a conscious mover. That's not a good thing. Subconscious flow is the goal. Yonda knew this. He said the goal is to get to the subconscious as fast as possible. He used subcortical exercises. He did no voluntary training. He didn't do any bands. Look at the Yonda approach book. It's full of bands. Yonda didn't do that. Yonda woke up the dead foot. He said, garbage in, garbage out. We have a sensory motor problem. We have to focus on the faulty input in the homunculus. The foot is disproportionately large. We have dead feet. We don't move. We don't walk on uneven terrain. We've entombed our feet in the casket of footwear, and there's no stimulation. It's like we're colorblind. We're sensorily blind. And so if you want to normalize motor output, normalize sensory input. That was Yonda, and his training was subcortical. He said, step onto a rocker board, step off a rocker board, squat on a rocker board, jump on a rocker board. He did lunges and jumps and squats. He stood on a rocker board with one foot or two, with the rocker board moving in the frontal plane or the sagittal plane. He put things in our hands. He guided by the side. That's what he taught, and I forgot. So adherence, of course, is a big issue, but the key to motivation is getting away from cortical training, getting into upstream nudges, which are behavior, which are based on what we know about behavioral psychology. The environment is the key. So again, Dr. Seuss, it's fun to have fun, but you got to know how. So here's 92-year-old Beverly Hills Betty, bird dogs. I'm not saying brace. I'm not saying don't flex your spine. Don't arch your back. Don't twist your pelvis.
You're killing it, Betty. Two more. Hold it. Make a fist now. Squeeze your grip. Reach your heel back. Switch.
92 years old.
Reaching your heel, making a fist. Make a nice firm fist with that right hand. Reach that heel back, stabilize,
fist is
breathe.
tension.
Good. All right.
We get a radiation.
Can you grab the ball?
Here's the best part.
Yes.
And stand up.
That's a squat.
Wow.
That's a
terrific.
Beverly Hills Betty. So the best environment I can have for my Fragilista patients, for Ash and those of you who are asking questions about people who are fear avoidant, is have senior citizens training in your gym with kettlebells. Giovanni continues, we have a mission, a shift in paradigm, mentality. This is what has to occur before people feel totally empowered and not left alone. This is an issue for upstream social changes. Policymakers and politics have to be involved. What can we as simple clinicians do? Until then, most patients that will stick to our approach will only be a minority. So aren't we only treating a niche? Surely Batman will try to save everybody, while Alfred might be more of a cynic. I think being coherent with who we are is extremely important to define ourselves and our business model. And how should we set the bar? Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Dr. Liebenson, for pointing out to us who the real hero is. So yes, we're talking about prevention, and upstream is a big issue, and there's not a lot we can do about upstream. I'm sadly going to have to agree with that. There's a certain amount of moralizing that occurs when we focus on the lifestyle determinants of health, smoking, nutrition, alcohol, physical activity, stress, social life, and sleep. A lot of people are disadvantaged. Look at all the social determinants of who is getting sickest and dying with COVID. Clearly, social determinants are outside of the great skill of our ER doctors and our respiratory therapists. This New England Journal of Medicine editorial said for healthcare's true transformation, Giovanni, to occur from a volume to a value-based framework, to be successful, we think that putting coverage of preventive services and treatments on a more even footing will deliver great value. And the problem is simple. Insurance companies, at least in the United States of America, have short-term contracts with employers. So they don't benefit with respect to what happens 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road. They have a short-sighted view. So this is a ball and chain on some of these changes. But we are seeing positive news. We know in Vancouver, they're building a no-car zone. And we know that having access to green spaces and walking paths lowers the risk of future problems. In New York City, they created the High Line, and the High Line took a great deal of investment, a great financial investment, but they hypothesized from economic assessment that they would save a tremendous amount of money on future renal dialysis. In Toronto, they built bike paths, and they found that bike paths, instead of spaces for parked cars, would increase activity levels appreciably, and they documented it. They videoed this and documented it. So there's a lot that can occur from public policy, and we want to encourage that as best we can and do what we can on an individual level. But of course, we're dealing with a community of practice. This is in Rehab of the Spine. We want to put physical activity principles into our practice and start to create, through just a pebble in the pond, concentric rings of change that will go out. But it's not enough. There has to be societal changes, policy changes, political changes. We have to involve the whole community. Things like group exercise, the model in China for group fitness in public parks, should migrate over to the West. At the end of the day, we want to help people have more confidence. Confidence is the cornerstone of great performance. It comes from one place, what people say to themselves. So we have to give them that positive experience with movement. As Barbara Simmons and Victoria Harding said, to increase confidence, patients need to attempt something feared, achieve it, and recognize it as their own achievement. Independence and control are fostered by teaching people to self-reinforce and attribute their gains to themselves. And this is the answer to our question that we had before from Hong Kong about the ratio of active and passive and how to balance these things. It's like Mackenzie taught, self-care first. He said, if you know the spine, then if somebody throws their back out, you should be able to teach them how to put their back in. We do self-care first. And that's why telehealth is such a gift for all of us to bear witness to how easy it is when we're constrained, when our hands are tied behind our back, how easy it is for us to have people have a positive experience with movement so they can self-attribute. And if they don't, we wind up with what Ryan is warning us. The sequela to COVID-19 is going to be a great deal of atrophy and sarcopenia. We're going to talk more about this in 2 weeks, but sarcopenia and frailty, they influence the quality of the last years of life. And now that we're living longer, issues about health span become critical. In fact, health span has gotten shorter. At Harvard, they say that you should measure your biological age. You should blow out the number of candles that relate to your biological age, not your chronological age, and that you can make yourself up to 19 years younger by controlling some of these lifestyle factors, in particular by maintaining muscle strength. So let me show you a little patient example here.
You absolutely crushed.
I appreciate you today very much, Craig, and I will be doing this again in a few.
Sounds good. I want to hear from you tomorrow. How was this experience for you?
It was 100%. I mean, it was really, really good. I missed a couple of the machines. It's obviously nice to have you in person, but this was absolutely what the doctor ordered for me. This is perfect.
So that was his first experience, his first taste. And I'm asking everybody what their first taste tastes like. I want reviews. So your back is still really irritable. Agreed?
Yes.
But you're able to find solutions.
Yes.
It's like Fauci said, the virus doesn't know timelines. It makes its own timelines.
That causes me to feel the most pause about this progress is when I go on a beautiful walk in the morning and it feels great. And then I try and bend down to pick up the newspaper and I can't do it. It's like, wait a minute. I just felt great walking, but it doesn't translate.
Anything. And bending can be a tricky thing, especially in the morning, even after a walk.
Yeah, I know.
Like when you're living your normal life without COVID, people with back pain like are embarrassed to complain to friends because you don't know who's on like kidney dialysis or a parent that's dying of cancer or you know, somebody with a special needs kid. So, you know, when you just have a back pain, like you don't want to say anything about that shit.
No, and it's
it's the most disabling thing in the world.
It really is. It really is. I never had this before, ever.
Take your back for granted.
I threw my back out when I was in college. Maybe this is related to that. Maybe it was.
No, it's not. Yeah, and learning how to do the basic stuff so you're not at like a fall risk when you're 75 or frailty when you're 85.
Yeah.
That's all going to be a fringe side benefit of this.
Yes, I get that.
So, all right.
You're the best.
Yeah, you just let me know when, but debrief with me tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions at all, just let me know about the ups and downs. Don't think that you need to grin and bear it.
Okay.
Let me know, and any questions you have, let me know.
I appreciate you, man.
You're gonna get better sooner than you think.
Stay healthy. Don't take your eye off it. That's what I tell everybody now.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It sometimes feels normal, but it's not.
Keep fouling off the bad pitches. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So that's Ken, and we'll follow through more with Ken on Sunday, but you can see it's not hard to connect with people. And the greatest technique of all is communication. And ironically, and I know Megan is with us from Boston. Megan, how you doing? Megan's a real master at this. Our ability to connect, and it's not about quick fix and cure, our ability to connect on a more person-centered foundational level with more empathy is if anything even greater. They're in the comfort of their own home. There's no distractions. We don't have a waiting room of patients. We don't have a receptionist saying your next patient is here. It's very interesting, and I want to share with you these type of cases where it's not necessarily a slam bam success. It's more about the interaction. Ken sent me a text. You guys will appreciate this, just to highlight this. And this gets to what we talked about before with fear reflection and some of the mythology around back pain and how things are more psychosocial and maybe less biomechanical than we thought. Crazy, got out of bed and was able to bend down and touch the floor and ride without stiffness and pain. I think there's a marked improvement now. Maybe it will sustain. Thanks. So we'll see more. I have some more from Ken coming up. But I really learned from people like Peter Stillwell just how we kind of had it wrong getting into these camps of pain science versus biomechanics. This dichotomization is a false dichotomization. The social is a code breaker, and that's really what the secret of Rehab of the Spine 3rd edition is about. It's about accepting uncertainty, taking a scientific approach where we test and go plan B, and we reassure people that we don't have all the answers. It's not a Batman approach. It's not a right and a wrong. We don't always know exactly what the cause of back pain is. And so we guide by the side, and we teach people to become more resilient, and we reassure them and give them confidence, and we give them a positive experience with movement, and we slow cook their fitness so they get stronger. They become more robust. It may sound crazy. I mentioned this earlier, I think, but it was almost more personal, a qualitative study of patient and clinical experiences with physical therapists prescribed knee osteoarthritis on Skype. It does sound crazy. It sounds crazy. How do you feel?
All right, good.
You did great. I have to be honest. I think that's the best I've seen you move.
Wow, really?
All right,
How
well,
did
it's
that
been,
feel? How did
What?
that feel?
that felt really good. Really, I feel much better now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's like connecting with you in New York is different even than when I see you in Union Square in person. Seeing you in your place, in your home is interesting. So how do you feel about the session?
Very good, very good, very good.
Thank you.
Work.
How many bags of popcorn are you going to give it? Out of 5 bags of popcorn, how many bags do you get?
4-2, 4-3.
I love it. We almost got 4.5 bags of popcorn. So I'm shooting for a five popcorn bag session next time.
All right, you got it. All right.
So that's John, and Ryan knows John very well. John's a bicoastal patient. I referred him to Reload, and we ask about bags of popcorn because he's one of these big time movie producers, sweetest guy in the world. But as Ryan knows, and I have to share with you guys some background here on his case, he's got a lot of musculoskeletal issues, and the pain migrates. And you know, in the clinic, it's like, oh, my side hurts, and you know, can you do something about that? And that's a recurrent theme. And I've done 3 telehealths with him. He's working harder. He's feeling better. And of course, he's not asking for the fix it. And I ask him at the end of each, you'll see more. You'll see this ongoing. You'll see it on Sunday when I show some more videos of John. He's pushing harder and he's not complaining. So it's a fascinating thing. I never would have expected this. It's an unintended benefit. So, you know, we want to be as compassionate as possible. We have to know what people's goals are. That's a big part of the motivational interviewing, the needs analysis. We want to develop a compassion to serve that is greater than our compulsion to survive. And a lot of us are afraid for our futures right now, but telehealth is a vine, and we'll get through this, and we'll be stronger as a result of it. And that's not just a platitude. We're gaining skills that reinforce what the biopsychosocial really is and about the power of communication. Here's from Sebastian Martinez. Last Sunday, you talked about finding the floor. You choose basic movement patterns like squat, lunge, hinge, push, pull, carry, and then you progress or regress. What do you do if the easiest of these patterns is painful? What is the most difficult challenge you find when assessing on telehealth? Well, great questions, Sebastian. And you know, we do look at the basic building blocks of movement literacy, especially like squat or single leg things. You need a squat cradle to grave. You got to be able to get up and down from a toilet when you're 85 or you're off to a nursing home. You got to be able to balance or you're at risk of a fall in your 70s. And falls are catastrophic, more likely cause of mortality than heart disease or cancer in 70-year-olds. So we want to be upstream of these things and prevent them. And when it comes to what do we do if the easiest regression is still painful? Well, how painful? So we've talked about the traffic light, but I think the bigger question is take courses from like Pavel Satsaline, because we need to get a trainable menu maybe that has more correctives. Go to FMS, and that's where FMS 2 comes in, is learn more correctives, because the correctives are the ultimate regressions. We're not saying throw the baby out with the bathwater with corrective exercise. I'm just muting the role of it a little bit and getting us to realize that rehabilitation is not about managing people away from load. Rehabilitation is something quite different. We're going to talk about the role of strength training and how to find the floor in future webinars. But we've, of course, emphasized that a lot today, and we'll continue to emphasize that. It's the central theme of Bridging the Gap, is finding the floor. So find the weakest links. See if the lunge pattern is the weakest link, or is the squat pattern the weakest link? And then find the hardest thing they do well. That's what you're going to prescribe for self-care. And one of the things with respect to these issues where everything hurts a little is showing this slide, because I'll give this is one of the only things I'll give to people on day one. Show them that the key to the red line going down is, number one, patience. So we have to wait for it. We have to wait for the good pitch. Keep fouling off the bad pitches. So the pain line is red. It's going up and down, up and down, up and down for almost 8 weeks. And then it starts to go down. So while we're waiting for it, we're not just resting. We're building function. The blue line is function. As function goes up, when it hits a certain critical point, then symptoms will start to go down. And if this was tendinopathy, I would push this thing out beyond 16 weeks. I would say symptoms may not go down for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. That's what Christian Thorberg is advocating, and he's the world's greatest tendinopathy expert. It takes time. And how does it get better? As Jill Cook, another great tendinopathy expert from Australia, says, it gets better through load. We can start with isometric. It can be uncomfortable. It doesn't have to be painless or pain-free. And then we can bring in the concentric and then the eccentric. So there's this gap between when function improves and when pain improves, and function better to feel better. That is the phrase at LA Sports and Spine. It's on my logo, function better to feel better. We don't focus on structural pathology. That's a nocebo. We focus on functional pathology. Why? Because you can come up with an intervention that will have impact. You can get the mostest from the leastest by focusing on function, not structure. There's the least downside risk. And so passive care has a role. It might be for comfort. You can liken passive care to like taking a cough drop. It'll help you feel better, but the cold's still gonna run its course. So there's nothing wrong with passive care. And as Krishnamurti, the great Indian philosopher, said, just because the window is open, there's absolutely no guarantee the breeze will blow in. But if the window remains shut, there's no chance the breeze will blow in. So we want to explain these things to people, put it in a positive frame of reference, so they know what to expect. We don't want to sell the moon in the sky. We know there's some grit that's required. There's a process, and unrealistic expectations are the death of satisfaction. There's a surgeon I'm very close with, and he was the king of satisfaction even when his surgery didn't work, because people knew that he cared. And he said, don't get the surgery right away. The surgery is the last resort. Try this, try that. Let's do more tests. He kept them in the game. He kept them fouling off pitches. When they finally were frustrated enough that they opted for the surgery, he said, you know, the surgery is not foolproof. There's side effects. There's post-op infection. We may have to repeat the surgery. The symptoms may recur. And then if he had a patient who didn't respond, they still saw him as the captain of the ship, even if the surgery failed. So to me, this is the model of science. This is what Carmen Bott refers to as thinking like a scientist and acting like a coach. A coach is there for you even when you lose, even when you fail, even when you get injured, they're still your coach. And so this is the scientific method. It's not the know-it-all approach. It's the learn, unlearn, relearn. So the way I look at science, this is a great physicist speaking here, is I want to fail as fast as possible. I want some ideas to fail as fast as possible so I can move on to the next one. If by some fortune something survives all my rigorous tests, then I can trust it. We're trying to disprove ourselves. These failures are highly productive because we're still learning. The failures we're seeing in science are some of the most productive I can imagine. This is like Mike Tyson says, plan A goes out the window the minute you get punched in the nose. So let me let you listen yourselves.
I think the principal element of science is actually failure. The way I look at science is that I try to fail as fast as possible. I want to make some idea not work as fast as I can so that I can move on to the next one, or by some kind of fortune, this idea survives all of my tests. That's what science is, surviving tests. And that's what we're trying to do when we're trying to directly detect dark matter or to infer what its nature is from astrophysical phenomena. We're trying to disprove ourselves. These failures are highly productive because we're still learning a lot about the universe. I think that the failures that we see in science are some of the most productive that I could imagine.
So at the end of the day, there's two basic principles that we're trying to summarize here in bridging the gap. The first is we want to identify if people are overprotective, if they're too guarded, and thus they're becoming sensitized centrally. And the second is under preparation. As far as overprotection, Janet Travell, the great trigger point expert and female White House physician for John F. Kennedy, our first female White House physician, the first woman med student, pre-med student or med student at an Ivy League med school, she said that after an injury, tissues heal, but muscles learn. And we readily develop habits of guarding that outlast the injury. So after an injury, tissues heal, but muscles learn. And we readily develop habits of guarding that outlast injury. So guarding or throwing the emergency brake, this fear avoidance that Ash and others have brought up, this is normal. This is expected illness behavior. It's not abnormal illness behavior. We want to know how to deal with it. That's why Lorimer Moseley says, if we appreciate that pain is a protective device and not a measure of tissue damage, and we can communicate that to people, thank you, Harley, then we can change the game. So here's another
so
quick
I
review
am finding that this has been incredibly helpful. Let me show you. So I have, every time when I feel a little stiffness coming, I do the following little routine, and it unstiffs me. I do this, just this.
Oh, I love it.
For about 6 times, and then I turn it into this. Now I can do it totally, but it usually starts like this, and then eventually I get all the way down to my toes, and I can do this easily, right? And
I love it.
When that's over with, I can bend down and pick things up easily. Because that's the thing. I used to go for like a 2-mile walk, and I come home and I try and get the paper, and I couldn't get past here, you know? Anyway.
That looks great. How has the last day or two been?
Very good. Because every time I felt it seizing up, I would go into the following 3-minute routine. I get down, I go back and up, and then I stand up. And I do this little thing, which seems to be my go-to. And then I do windmills, and it would just stretch out. It's crazy.
Well, maybe things are starting to thaw.
Boy, would that be nice.
Oh, God. You certainly earned it.
Well, I don't know about earning it, but I'm having, you know, it's not perfect, but I've been in some pain.
You've been in some pain for a while.
Yeah. Okay, so go ahead, Coach. It's on you.
All right. Let's do another set of what you just did, because that's the best I've ever seen you using the squat technique.
This is what I do. I do 20 of these. And
Now, can you face the other way? I want to see the profile. Profile. Other way. Now hold it right there. Hold it. You have perfect form. And that's perfect. Now separate your feet and keep going. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that means. Oh, you
bring one foot in front.
I hate that thing. Let's
see how it feels today.
Well, for this leg, it feels great.
Let's see how this one feels. It's a test.
Not bad. Hey, holy shit. Really? Oh, man. That's amazing. That's about a 60–70% improvement. Can you believe that?
I believe it. I've been waiting for it.
Holy shit. It hurts still, but I'm doing it. Holy cow. Well, that's the most tangible evidence I have right now that I'm improving, because that was impossible.
Now bring your hands behind your neck.
Don't push it. Oh, got it done.
So you can see how much the social constraint of not being in the clinic does not interfere. Telehealth is a stunning thing in terms of providing us real world empirical evidence that guiding by the side can be every bit as effective and maybe even more so than being with a person where they may become more sensitive and more of a fragilista. So this environment is so crucial to us. Here's Ken again. Bring 1 foot in front.
I hate that thing. That's the one.
Let's see how it feels today.
Well, for this leg, it feels great.
Let's see how this one feels. It's a test.
Not bad. Hey, holy shit. Really? Oh, man. That's amazing. That's about a 60-70% improvement.
So you're getting the idea there. I don't mind re-showing that, but Sunday we'll show subsequent visits. So Rob Whitley here talking about what Ryan has discovered and what I've learned from studying Tim Gabat and applying this work to the field of rehab is that chronic rehabbers are just that, because we're managing them away from load. Rehab must load them up to get high chronic workloads. So we want people to be better prepared. So our twin keys are to identify and address overprotection and identify and address under preparation. Maria from Wales said, we need more people to follow you as students and new grads. We're feeling left behind and we're not up to date. A webinar like this with all this value should not have been limited to 100 attendees. That was our first webinar. So we opened it up to quite a few more. How to adjust people's beliefs and give value on these consultations. The problem is expectations in the United Kingdom and everywhere. People love passive care. Everybody wants a rub. I'm paying you, you got to help me is what I'm struggling with every day in practice. I can't wait to attend the FPM lab immersion experiences in Europe. So we'll be back in Europe and Istanbul or Prague or England or Wales as soon as it's safe to do so. But in the meantime, we want to share with these webinars these details, because I can show successes, that's not enough. We can talk about the floor and the ceiling and bridging the gap, it's not enough. We've got to get in the weeds, and that's why this is an ongoing series. We're going to be digging into the why, what, and how this Sunday. We're going to be digging in in more detail about regressions and progressions. We're going to dig into sarcopenia and frailty. We're going to dig into special populations as we go. But we know upside, regular exercise can keep people 30 years younger. We shouldn't have trouble motivating people. We can give them evidence. The rate of muscle mass loss from the age of 40 is 8% per decade, rising to 15% per decade once a person is over 70. Realize that 90% of people over the age of 70 are not meeting physical activity guidelines. The 15-year decline in muscle strength among over 75-year-olds, however, can be reversed in just 3 months of resistance training, twice a week resistance training. So Joel Weisberg, who's with the Canadian Chiropractic Guideline Initiative, where they develop evidence-based clinical practice guidelines, said, elaboration in one particular area, how can we use the telehealth for assessment of the musculoskeletal system? This area was not explored in depth in your first webinar. Well, I'm the first to admit that we're gonna have trouble evaluating the ear canal. But I think you can guide by the side. You can look at how somebody squats. You can look at how they lunge. You can look at single leg balance. Everybody stand up. Stand up, fold your arms, stand on one leg. Look straight ahead. Now switch legs. Stand on the other leg. Look straight ahead. Now go back to the first leg. Look straight ahead, spot something in front of you and close your eyes. This is an assessment of the proprioceptive input into the balance system. It should be a lot harder with eyes closed. Once you take away one of the inputs, when we're challenging single leg, we're challenging proprioception. When we strip away eyes, all we have left is that single leg in our inner ear. It becomes very hard. We use these 3 systems, the labyrinth, the sensory, the proprioceptive input from the sole of the foot, and the visual cervical from the eyes
in order to maintain equilibrium. When we strip away 2 of the 3, we strip away 1.5 of the 3, it gets damn hard and we can find a floor. Do the same on the other leg. Stand on one leg, look straight ahead, spot something in front of you and close your eyes. Odds are one leg is going to be more drunk than the other. This is our sobriety test. You can assess the musculoskeletal system. You can look at jiu-jitsu, shin box. You know, Zoom is this great thing. When we do telehealth, at the end, we've got the whole workout with our patient. We send them the whole workout. I used to just send people clips I did on my iPhone or their iPhone. I'd airdrop it to them. Now we got the whole workout. They get the whole workout. So who's behind the COVID-19 virus? It's Zoom, of course, because I can't get any tech support from Zoom. They're getting all my money.
Bring one foot in front.
I hate that thing.
Look at Ken. So self-management focuses on the patient's ability to manage their own condition rather than a doctor-centered approach. It's patient-centered, it's person-centered. It's not pathology-centered, it's functional, it's environmentally based. The aim is to restore autonomy, to liberate people from being hostage of patho and anatomical diagnoses or trainers' corrective exercise nocebos. The aim is to restore autonomy to the person and include education and learning components to position the person in the center of their own training program, to help them acquire and maintain competencies that enable them to efficiently manage their own condition and to manage their own lifestyle and preventive approach. So here's one of our great allies in this, great teachers, Hunter Krein, who works in New York City side by side with Ryan. And he said, I was surprised early on that people in their own homes worked out harder. I had to coach less and in the comfort of their own surroundings, it made them move with more confidence. The truth is that they think they need me to tell them what to do or to fix something, but online removes that from the equation. Less options equals more work, Pavel. They are empowered to use what they have, and the separation of trainer and client benefits them greatly. Hunter Krein, fitness coach, Reload, New York City. So Hunter is the man. You see me with my dog ears and my dog snout. So I always ask people, how do we do this? Rubber hits the road. Send me a photo of your space. Use your laptop so you have a screen that tilts. Zoom is great because it saves the session. We can send a link to our clients and patients. I ask them what they have. All they need is a mat or bands, yoga block, maybe a valve slider, a kettlebell or a dumbbell if they have it. We want to keep it simple. It is in all of our hands to create a better world for all the people who live in it. Nelson Mandela is enjoying all of us to learn from this. This is the gift of injury, like Professor McGill and Brian Carroll said in the cover of their book. This is an unanticipated benefit. It's that Grateful Dead line from Robert Hunter. If you look at it right, you get shown the light in the strangest places. You get shown the light in the strangest places if you look at it right. We can change our angle of vision. We can look at this in a positive way and see how we can change the world. So we can't touch the elderly or those with comorbidities, people who are social distancing, but we can still reach out. We can still touch people. We can touch people with a text, with an email, with a call, with a Skype, with Zoom. Contact 5 people you think may be isolated, reach out. As news about this outbreak continues to dominate the headlines and millions of people are being asked to self-quarantine, it is even more important that we pay as much attention as possible to our mental health. So I want to thank all of you. I hope to see you Sunday at 9. Aaron is going to send out a link to all of you. I want to ask you to post your questions on the Facebook page on First Principles. Email me your questions. We'll use some of them next time. We'll bake them in. I think we have time for one final question. Aaron, you got one question for us?
Yep, this one's from Mark. So if a patient has a poor hip hinge, do you correct that so that it improves other exercises, for example, the squat? Or do you work within what they are capable of? Adapt the squat to that?
I effing love that question. So here I am talking about social, environmental, behavioral, upstream nudges, psychology, constraints-based, and I get a sparing biomechanical question. I love that. So we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Is this Mark that asked that? What was the name, Aaron?
Yep, Mark.
All right, so I love it. So yeah, we're still in the biomechanical. We're not leaving the biomechanical. And we'll get people, and you saw tall kneeling for for my patient. We'll get them into tall kneeling if they don't hinge well, and we'll get them to hip hinge. It's a simple auto regulation, what Gray Cook calls reactive exercise for hip hinge. But you saw also with Ken, he came up with trunk flexion on his own. Windmill, he added flexion and rotation. That's taboo. You don't bend and twist at the same time. That's how you cause a nuclear material to squirt out the backside, posterolateral, across the room, like Greg Lehman says. Goodness gracious. So yeah, I love hip hinge. You know, if you're going to load, and Kieran O'Sullivan, JP Canario, Peter O'Sullivan, and Ben Smith, they all agree. If you're going under load, you still got to raise the bar for technical proficiency. But in acute care, maybe we've gone too far down that rabbit hole, Mark. Maybe you don't have to do as much of the biomechanical as we thought. Test it for yourself. Follow Peter O'Sullivan on Twitter. Let's take another just in case, okay? Another something that's not on biomechanics, if you will. And Megan is with us too, so if you can unmute Megan, that would be phenomenal. Give us a really great question, Aaron. That's not.
Let's go.
Not trapped in the world.
This one's from Jean-Pierre. As a personal trainer, I see some clients several times per week over many years, and therefore I find myself working more and more on small details, which in my experience make a big difference to their progress. Would you say that the not overcorrecting is more important in the initial part of rehab and less so with long-term clients?
Megan, you want to knock it out of the park for us? Take us to Sunday? Aaron and Ryan, you able to unmute her?
I don't think I can, but
let's see.
I could take a crack at it if you want.
No, let's hear from Megan.
Yeah, we can't unmute.
All right, so take us out, Ryan.
So I think the most important thing is to do what John Wooden says and not overcorrect if it causes resentment, because we're sending the wrong message when we talk about correcting, overcorrecting. It doesn't matter at what level we're talking. Yes, you know, some athletes might need more proficiency in their performance, but the whole idea is that if you overcorrect something, if you bring too much nuance to it, people get paralyzed and they think that they can't move forward without you, and they think that everything needs to be perfect. But the reality is that stops progress. Perfection is the enemy of progress. So I think, you know, correcting is the past, and I think the future is dynamic systems and setting up a situation where they're going to learn. So the trap is you get them to do it perfectly which is great motor control, but the negative side effect of that is they never learn anything. They never problem solve anything. And the reason why that's important is because that's what's going to translate over to their situation, because it's going to be all about being able to adapt to complex situations that have a lot of different factors. So I think it's like Feldenkrais said, it's always incorrect to correct. So yeah, let's make it about coaching and not about the exercise. You have to know the exercise and the biomechanics to be a good coach, but it's more about the communication and the delivery.
That was amazing. That was amazing. Mic drop. Holy cow. So we're going to hit the why, when, and how Sunday at 9 Pacific Standard Time. We'll try to go Facebook Live again. We'll try to be able to unmute a few people so you can hear from some other people as well. And I think in 2 weeks, webinar number 4, we're going to hit atrophy and sarcopenia and the role of resistance training. And probably webinar 5, we have our topic now. We're probably going to hit this issue of corrective exercises and when you need pristine. When do you need that grade 3 perfect form? And when do you want to avoid overcorrecting, to Ryan's point? So I want to thank my panelist, Ryan Chow. He'll be with us for the duration. I want to thank Aaron Geronimo. I want to thank all of you from all over the world. Ask us questions on First Principles of Movement Facebook. Email me questions that we'll bake into the next presentation. Tell your friends, join us. This is a gift to us. You're giving us a gift by giving us your attention. And it's our honor, our privilege to share with you. Thank you guys very, 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 very much.
Take care, everyone.